Now, the ANC has made an about turn after earlier resolving to charge media houses for space at its 55th elective conference at Nasrec in Johannesburg next month. Yesterday, Acting Secretary General Paul Mashatile said the governing ANC has no intention to charge a fee for media coverage. For more on this, we are joined by political analyst Thembisa Fakude. Mr. Fakude, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Now, the ANC spokesperson, Bulemabe, told journalists at the Nasrec Conference Center in Johannesburg on Wednesday during a media walkabout that media houses would have to pay for coverage of the elective conference. How did the ruling party even get to such a decision?
Well, I listened to Bulemabe's explanation yesterday, and what he said was that any additional requirement from the media will have to pay themselves. But of course, as you said, it's a U-turn from what was initially said. And also a U-turn from what has been the tradition within the ANC. I used to head a media broadcast institution in South Africa, and often we'll be taken on recce's just before the conference so that we ensure that as members of the media we had enough space, we had enough technical support, etc. So what was said a couple of days ago, of course, came as a surprise to all of us. And the immediate explanation that we were given was that the ANC was trying to raise money, given that it is currently cash-strapped. But at the same time, I'm not quite sure how they came up with that idea, because definitely it kind of, it enters a different territory in terms of freedom of the media and freedom of expression. And one would expect that since the conference is a platform and a gathering of the people, you'll facilitate that instead of trying to restrict it.
Well, I mean, of course, they have made an about turn, but he's also come out to say that it's an idea that has to be considered, and possibly post this conference, they will go to different media houses and start negotiating and exploring this idea. So maybe this was just to test the waters, but it is actually something that the ANC is looking to get into?
Well, it's a dangerous territory. I mean, the excuse that's been used at the moment is that the ANC cannot fund additional requests from the media institutions. So what they give you, you have to live with it. But the problem is that there are a lot of technical requirements, particularly from the television and radio, that are required for us to function properly. So if you want to have to accept what you've been given by a person who hasn't got a technical know-how, as I've said earlier on, that before we used to be taken by the ANC to go and help the ANC organize media coverage by identifying the technical requirements and all other things. But what we see at the moment is that you're basically going to be given what they think is an appropriate space, and any additional requirement will have to be at your own cost. I think that's not going to be accepted by the media. As we've seen, SANEF has already protested, and one hopes that the road visits that the ANC will be undertaking next week with the media houses will seek to explain. But I don't think that the media houses, particularly broadcast, will accept anything less than what they require.
Well, I mean, apart from SANEF, the EFF also came out and gave a statement subsequent to the ANC making these suggestions, and the EFF saying that these financial demands were tantamount and should be characterized as greed, and they amount to censorship. Now, the ANC had its reasons in finding these extra funds and the fact that there's additional costs with more people that have now applied to be at their conference, and then backtracking simply sends a different message out. And I mean, what would one put to the ANC being a reactional party when it comes to the opposition and the social media uproar that came about with this decision?
Yeah, well, it was an own goal. I mean, ANC is an organization that has promoted and fought for media freedoms and freedom of expression in this country. And as I've said, over the years, we've covered a number of conferences, and it has been the ANC that has encouraged media and invited media, by the way, days before the conference started, to go and recce the places where the media was supposed to be accommodated, including the technical requirements, etc. So one wonders what was the reason this time around. But having said that, as I said, it's an own goal, and Bulamabi misspoke as far as I'm concerned. And I'm glad that they've withdrawn that statement. And then one hopes that the visit that we're making to the media houses next week will seek to explain exactly what was the rationale behind the decision, and hopefully they're not going to be resorting back to that decision in future.
We know that in August, the party owed 86 million rands in Provident Fund contributions for over 530 of its staff members, as well as keeping up with the 17 million rand salary bill has been quite difficult for the party. How dire is the financial situation for the ANC?
Well, it seems like the situation is quite dire. The fact that we're given that as an excuse, that the reason why that decision to charge the media for additional facilities was made is due to lack of funds. But again, this, it kind of borders very closely on suppressing basic freedoms. And one hopes that, in the future they won't take a similar decision. But media has got nothing to do with the financial woes of the ANC. In fact, it should be invited, because the conference of the ANC is not necessarily a property of the ANC. It belongs to the people. ANC is the people's movement, and if you're going to impose certain restrictions to the media, you are going to, indirectly prevent people from accessing all the information that they're supposed to access during this conference. It's a very important conference, and you have to do whatever it takes to ensure that the people get to understand and see what's happening at the conference.
And that's what I was going to ask. What impact would charging for such a conference have, especially a conference of this magnitude, on media freedom? Because we do know that some media houses would possibly not be able to afford what the ANC would charge.
Well, it simply doesn't make sense, whatever way you look at it. Maybe it will make sense if you say you restrict certain payment for international media who comes with other requirements. It's always been the case. But this decision was a blanket decision that would have impacted on everyone, including the SABC, which is a public broadcaster. So that is quite troubling. It's going to, if it was implemented, it was certainly going to restrict access to information, particularly by ordinary citizens of this country.
All right. Thank you so much. It's always great having you. Thank you so much for your time. That was Thembisa Fakude, who's a political analyst, giving us his take on the ruling party and what they would have charged to media houses for them covering the 55th elective conference.